Hey guys, I'm back again with another video, and today I just wanted to share some thoughts and opinions on the recently announced X-T5 from Fuji. As always, if you're new to the channel, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and don't forget to hit the bell icon to turn on notifications. For those of you that are returning subscribers, welcome back and thanks for joining me. So I've been shooting with the Fuji X-T4 for a while now, and really this camera has been an absolute joy, though there were always a couple of things that I thought could have been done a little better. So naturally, I was always eager to find out what Fuji would bring to the table in the form of the next generation X-T5. Let's break this down into chapters. If you want to scrub through, then please feel free. This video has timestamps. The first and most noteworthy new thing is the 40.2 megapixel X-Trans5 sensor, which is the same sensor that we get on the flagship X-H2. The sensor is a huge jump from its predecessor. Fuji claimed that it performs very similarly, if not better than the previous gen 26.1 megapixel sensor in terms of noise and low light performance, so all that is pretty great. I really cannot complain because frankly a higher resolution sensor is what we all wanted for Fuji's next generation cameras. The sensor is a massive and welcome upgrade, so thumbs up to that. The next noteworthy thing I found interesting, albeit in not a good way, was the reintroduction of the three-way articulating screen from the X-T3. Personally, I've always hated the flip screen on the X-T4, not because of functionality, but simply because of how cheap and flimsy it felt. For me, it's something that never quite matched up with the robust industrial nature of the build quality on the X-T4. And really, it just felt like something they stuck on at the end like an afterthought. I'm definitely not a fan, so much so that I get a great deal of paranoia every time I flip the screen open on my X-T4. The mechanism feels super cheap and it feels like it can break any time. Overall, I much prefer the three-way mechanism from the X-T3 for its quality. However, functionality-wise, this is where the X-T5 gets a little bit weird. I really thought that Fuji would re-engineer a new flip screen mechanism that would keep the articulation and functionality of the one on the X-T4, but improve on the design where needed, like with build quality. Picture something like what Sony has done with the new A7R5. But instead we got a downgrade, and there really is no other way of looking at it than that, because irregardless of build quality, the old three-way flip screen from the X-T3 is simply just less functional. I have no idea what Fuji were thinking here, and to be honest, I believe that's a huge portion of creators, besides just photographers, that they've completely ignored there. Furthermore, another thing is the current state of the Fujifilm crop sensor camera lineup. In previous years, the lineup was far more focused, but now I feel like Fuji is starting to submit to commercialization in the form of aggressive market segmentation. There are a couple of reasons why I say this. So this year, Fuji announced the flagship models, the X-H2 and X-H2S. A high resolution, high megapixel camera for photographers, as well as a lower resolution but faster camera mainly for live action photography. What's weird is that historically the XH line was always more a photographer focused lineup as opposed to a hybrid video shooter one, and yet Fuji went ahead and went all out with video features on the X-H2. The X-H2 can record 8K video at 30p, 6.2 also at 30p, and an oversampled 4K 30p from an 8K image. The camera also has robust codecs like H.265, Apple ProRes, and 10-bit 422 recording in body. Now the X-H2S doesn't do 8K, but it will do 6.2K at 30p in a 3:2 open gate aspect ratio, and it will also do 4K 120p though with a 1.29x crop. You even get an attachable cooling fan which allows both cameras to record video for longer without overheating. So it's easy to see that essentially these two cameras are high-end hybrid cameras, with the X-H2 being the flagship. So the question becomes, if we now already have a flagship APS-C hybrid shooter, then where does the X-T5 fit in? The X-T lineup has mainly been aimed at being the ultimate hybrid Fuji camera in the lineup, and now Fuji has completely blurred the lines. Personally, I felt like the X-T lineup was always suited for hybrid shooters that enjoy the mechanical feel and design of the dials when taking photos, whilst also having the ability to record high quality video when required. If you compare all three cameras, serious videographers will go with the X-H2 without a doubt, and serious photographers will either go with the X-H2S or again the X-H2. leaving the X-T5 in a very weird position. If you then compare the X-T5 and the X-H2, you can easily see that the X-H2 is still the better camera for photography, with stuff like a higher frame rate and higher resolution EVF and larger buffer that allows for 400 raw images at 15 frames per second of mechanical shutter versus the X-T5's measly 19 raw images at the same speed. Furthermore, if you're a hybrid shooter and video is important, then still the X-H2 outperforms the X-T5 because it records 8K at 30p, where the X-T5 tops out at just 6.2K at 30 frames per second. To make this even more detrimental for the X-T5, it does not have any support for a battery grip, which again begs the question, who is the X-T5 for? How can this be a photography-focused camera without the option for a battery grip? And how can it be a video-focused hybrid camera without the best video features on the market? When you look at these three cameras side by side, it's unclear what Fuji is trying to do with this lineup, but nonetheless, if you want a flagship crop sensor camera for photos from Fuji, then you have two options in the form of the X-H2 and X-H2S. And if you want a flagship hybrid shooter from Fuji, then really there's no doubt that the X-H2 is the obvious weapon of choice. But if you want a solid hybrid Fuji camera that is not necessarily the latest and greatest, then all of a sudden the X-T4 becomes such a compelling argument, especially if you consider that you can pick one up for just $1,700 for the body. And while you're not getting the next generation 40.2 megapixel sensor and 6.2K video, you're pretty much getting everything else and a more useful flip screen for video. Now, I will admit that the X-T5 is up for pre-order right now at the same $1,700 price point, though over time as the X-T5 hits the market, the X-T4 will go down in price without a doubt. I strongly believe that the X-T5 will not be a very popular camera, and I say this because as an X-T4 owner, I have no intention to upgrade to the X-T5, and I suspect that other X-T4 owners will likely share the same viewpoint, which mainly leaves newcomers. Content creators like YouTubers and indie filmmakers will likely skip the X-T5 due to that limited flip screen. And realistically speaking, the demographic that might end up buying the X-T5 are newcomers that like the industrial design and feel, and photographers that want a modern Fuji digital camera that is not necessarily the cutting edge in terms of features and specs. It's a rather avoidable slippery slope, and I believe that Fuji really hasn't delivered with the X-T5, especially to people like me that would mainly be interested in such a camera. Someone that needs a high-end hybrid camera with all the video features and also some very strong features for photography as well. The Fuji X-T5 now sits below the X-H2 and X-H2S, and actually a lot closer than you'd think to the camera it replaces, the X-T4, in terms of actual usable features and specs, with the new X-Trans 5 sensor being the main difference and improvement. At $2,000, the X-H2 is now the Fuji APS-C flagship cameras for videographers and photographers, excluding live action photographers of course, and as far as I'm concerned, there really isn't much need for the X-T5 going into 2023. Thanks for watching, and I hope that this video has been helpful to you. If you aren't already subscribed to the channel, then make sure that you do. It's completely free, guys, and make sure to hit that bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. I'll catch you folks in the next one.